Hi everyone and welcome to today's webinar with our lovely guest presenter Danielle Lewis. She's going to be talking to you guys today about influencer marketing. Now if you don't know Danielle, she is the co-founder and CEO of Scrunch.com. Scrunch helps brands connect and collaborate with their perfect influencer. She has a background in fashion, design, blogging and enterprise sales. And welcome. So take it away Danielle.
So let's get into it. So today what we're going to cover is 5 things. Firstly, how do businesses use influencer marketing? And I'm excited to share all of the awesome ways that influencers are being used today. It's not just a bikini girl on Instagram anymore. There are so many ways that you can use influencers to help grow your business. The second one is, does it really work? And spoiler alert, it does, but I'm going to show you a few examples in different industries. 3, what are some of the common pitfalls and of course how you can avoid them. Framework for success, and then we'll take some questions at the end. So before we even get started, what is influencer marketing? So if you're on the webinar, you might either already know what influencer marketing is and want to get a deeper dive, or you might have just heard people start to sort of throw the word influencer around. Essentially, influencer marketing is the new word of mouth marketing. So just like, if you'd gone to an amazing restaurant over the weekend and told your friend or your mum about it, that's the old school word of mouth where it's one-to-one. Influencer marketing makes word of mouth one-to-many, which is awesome. So an influencer can really be anyone. It's anyone that motivates your customer to buy. So it could actually be your customers as influencers for your business. It could be an Instagrammer. It could be an expert in your field. It's basically anybody that speaks to the audience that you want to speak to. So it's a way to tap into them to promote your brand and products. So the first one, how do businesses use influencer marketing? And this is why I love this industry, because influencers are not just a one-trick pony. There's so many ways that you can leverage influencers. Content generation is the first one, and it is awesome. So a lot of brands, they really get stuck working in their day-to-day operations of their business. And creating content can be really hard and really expensive and really time consuming. So influencers are a fabulous way to build up a bank of content. We have a lot of different brands that we work with that actually solely use influencers for this reason. So what they'll do is they'll either invite an influencer into their store, or they'll send them out some products, and they'll actually just have the influencers create 10 to 20 images in their own personal style. And then they give the rights to those images back to the brand so they can use them on their social media. They can use them in their website. They can use them in their advertising. It's a fantastic way to get a great bank of content without you having to actually hire a model, a photographer, an editor, and all of those bits and pieces that you might need to actually create that bank of content. So the next one is user-generated content. And this is really interesting. A lot of people start to put up competitions where they will ask their customers or their audience to participate in something, whether it be to share their story, whether it be to upload a photo. And it's actually really difficult to get user-generated content off the ground. So what we like to use influencers for is almost to kickstart it. So we'll actually go out and find very, very micro influencers and have them actually actively participate in what the call out is from the brand. So whether it be sharing their own personal story or creating content around a specific topic or idea. And what that does is it actually gives consumers permission to do it themselves. So it's a fabulous way to really set an example and show consumers that other people are really already getting onto the bandwagon. The next one is awareness. And awareness is something that we're probably most familiar with. So it is very much about getting the brand or product into the hands of the influencer and having them actually post it out on their channels. So whether that be their blog or their social media, essentially what we're doing here is tapping into their audience of followers and spreading the word about either the new product or the brand. Website traffic. So website traffic's fabulous. If you, especially if you actually sell something from your website and it's not just a landing page. So website traffic, the only thing to keep in mind here is because we're actually driving a particular behavior, which is typically clicking on a link and then going to your website, the actual influencer and social channel that we might use is a little bit different as well. So what we might do is a Facebook post from an influencer, or a Twitter post, or a blog post, because they can actually hold links. What we find is if we just put up, we just work with the Instagrammers who can't actually put a link in their photo description, then their website traffic KPI won't be met as well as if we had have used one of the other channels. So lead generation is next. So this is fabulous if you collect leads from your website, or you want people calling into a salon to book an appointment. So what we do here is we have a different call to action from the influencer. So if we're really interested in capturing leads, we'll have the influencer's copy contain that call to action to make sure that we're actually asking the consumer to do the particular action that we want. Next up is SEO. And SEO is so important for everyone. And the part that influencers pay is really creating backlinks. So what we do when we want to create a solid SEO strategy for a customer is actually engage with bloggers. So influencers that actually have websites, and what we do is we'll get them to review the brand or product on a blog post and link back to the website. So what that does is that creates these backlinks that Google absolutely love and gives you all of the fabulous Google juice for your SEO. Social media growth, which is probably another similar one to awareness. So what we have here is influencers who actually tag the brand in their social media posts, and that in turn leads to social follower growth for the brand as well. Sales. Now, sales is the holy grail, and it's not always the first objective that a brand has when they use influencer marketing, but certainly as they mature in their influencer marketing strategy, they need all of their marketing activities to be leading to sales. So what we tend to do here is, once we've really got a solid foundation of amazing content going out, lots of people becoming familiar with the brand, is we really start to change the call to action that an influencer might say when they post about the brand to a sales page or to a product page. Donations. Donations is a really interesting one. And I love this because it means that influencer marketing is starting to work for not-for-profit sectors as well, and charities. So in a similar way where we drive a call to action for a sale, we can actually have influencers aligned to a charity or a not-for-profit that is close to their value system, and call out for donations as well. And the final one is damage control. And this is very interesting. So you might see it most in politics, when essentially they're trying to seed an idea within a community. Sometimes it's about an election, other times it's about potentially infrastructure that needs to be built. So influencers can actually really create an idea and spread an idea within their local communities. So we find that it gets used a little bit more in politics than we might even like to admit. So as you can see, influencer marketing can be used for so many different things in the business, and really where we say the place to start is really understanding what your main objective is for influencer marketing, as to what objective you'll actually ask the influencer to move ahead with. So does it really work? So yes, very exciting. We can use it for all of these different things, but does it actually translate into an outcome for the business? It really does. And the reason that I love it is because it's not just in, you know, fashion and beauty anymore. It's actually spread out to quite a number of different industries. So what I thought I'd do is share with you a few examples of influencer campaigns that we've worked on recently, and the outcomes that they've driven. So this is a fabulous example of the travel industry. So we worked with AirAsia, Top Deck and Perth Airport, and we flew 3 influencers out to different locations to actually experience a tour. And those influencers, their key objectives were producing pieces of content. So Top Deck Travel really have a lot of brochures still, so it's less concerned about digital and more concerned about those beautiful brochures that you would see in a travel agent. So they were really lacking in really beautiful authentic pieces of content. They tend to find that they were using a lot of stock imagery. So they sent these influencers out on a mission to capture really unique and authentic experiences by actually experiencing those tours themselves. So they produced 89 pieces of content over a period of 3 weeks. And their second objective was to drive consumers to a competition page. So they wanted to generate leads. And almost 7 million consumers were reached. And over 700,000 consumer engagements occurred as well. And so that was all in a very short period of time that they were able to achieve these results, which is fantastic. The next one is Mini, so moving into the automobile industry. So Mini, in partnership with Vogue, actually had fashion influencers take out their cars for a test drive and create content around them. And really their objective was actually just repositioning the brand. They really wanted consumers to resonate with the stylish features of the car. So they used fashion and style influencers to align to their credibility. And then Witchery. So Witchery dressed influencers for the last fashion week that was held in Sydney. And really what they did is they had each of the fashion influencers pair and style one Witchery item with a high-end designer label. And so really what Witchery were trying to do is reposition themselves into more of a premium market. And over 500,000 consumers were reached with that message as well, which was very cool. So we know already that there are so many applications for influencer marketing. We know that it works, but what are some of the common pitfalls? That's what I wanted to share with you today. So don't make these mistakes. You might, have had a bad experience with influencer marketing. You might have heard some propaganda around influencer marketing. There's been a few incidences like the Fire Festival that occurred over in America this year, where influencers and models were enlisted to promote the festival, and then the festival really fell flat. And, there's been incidences of brands using influencer images commercially without the rights to it. So there's been a few incidences where influencers have sort of got a bad rap, but there's really 5 key things that we see that brands do, that are mistakes, and that's why I wanted to share them with you today to avoid them. So the first one is not reviewing the data. And what I mean by that is it's super important to really understand who your customer is before you actually reach out to an influencer. It's very easy to see an influencer who looks the part, who has a lot of followers, but really at the end of the day, it's not the influencer that we're actually interested in. It's your customers, and it's actually getting a message out to them. So the critical piece of that puzzle is actually understanding who an influencer's followers are. And you can do that in 2 ways. Reaching out to the influencer and asking them to send you through their data. It's your money, you're working with the influencers, you have every right to ask for that information, and we highly recommend it. The second way, of course, is using Scrunch, where we do that all for you, but I'll leave that to the very end. The second one is understanding that it is still up to you to convert the lead into a sale. So influencers are like every other advertising channel. They are pushing your message out to their follower base, just like if you purchased a Google ad or a Facebook ad, sending a message out to a potential customer. What happens then is the customer interacts with your brand. They might land on your socials or your website. It is still up to you to actually move that lead into a sale. Now, that might be understanding your sales funnel through your website and making sure that it converts. It might be reviewing your social media and making sure that you're sending the right message, you've got beautiful content, you're regularly keeping them updated, and all of your contact information is up to date. So what we always say to a brand is make sure that on your end, when we send the customers your way, you're doing everything in your power to ensure that it converts to a sale as well. The third one is not setting correct expectations. So in the new landscape of influencer marketing, there are so many different stakeholders. There are agencies, there are media agencies, PRs, there is the brand, there's the influencer, there's their talent manager. They might have 2 talent managers depending on if they're a model as well. So there's so many different ways where your message and expectations, might get lost. So it's super super important to set a very strict brief for influencers to ensure that whatever it is you're engaging them for, you get. So that's a big one. The fourth one is not optimizing your campaigns. And this again comes back to the fact that influencer marketing is 100% like every other marketing and advertising channel. So I like to use the example of Google AdWords. When you use Google AdWords for the first time, if you've got a $10,000 marketing budget, you don't just pour it all in on day one. You optimize your copy, you test different call to actions, you test different audiences until you find what works and converts, and then you start to drip more money into it. Influencer marketing is exactly the same. It really does take a little bit of time to identify which influencers speak to the correct audience, which influencers in what categories work best and convert best for you, and what type of content and copy converts best for you as well. So we always say go smaller to start with, figure out what works, check the data, and then start to increase and scale your campaigns as you go. And the last one is incorrectly using content. And this really comes back to protecting yourself as a brand. So by default, brands don't own the content that influencers produce. It's still owned by the influencer. You can share it as long as you tag it, but you can't actually use it commercially. So you couldn't put it up on your website on a product page, and you couldn't put it on a billboard. You couldn't put it on a t-shirt as Lorna Jane did. So if you intend to use that content commercially, you just need to make sure that you've got those rights from the influencer in advance. And so that's as simple as either at the start of the campaign, making sure you write that into the brief and ensuring if you need to pay anything extra, you do. Or if you decide at the end of the campaign that there's sort of one or two pieces of content that you love that you do want to use commercially, then negotiating with that with the influencer. And so lastly, a framework for success. And so what I wanted to do is make sure that not only did I tell you how exciting influencer marketing was, and that other brands are finding success and what not to do, but also the exact framework that we use at Scrunch when we do our influencer marketing campaigns with our brands. And it's 11 steps, not all of them as long as each other, but they're really important, and it's something that we, over the last several years and hundreds of influencer campaigns, we've really learnt. We've really made every mistake and learnt from all of those different things. So I wanted to make sure that if you plan to, after this call, set off on your own influencer marketing journey, you know exactly what we would do. So the first one that we do is what we call a customer workshop. And essentially what you would do here is have this yourself with your own internal teams. And what it's really doing is sitting down and understanding who you are as a brand, what product you want to promote, and what outcome you want. And also who your customer is that you're actually targeting, because that will lead on to all of the other steps. The second one is identifying your objectives and KPIs. And the reason in steps 1 and 2 that we seek to understand who our customer is and what they're trying to achieve is that will dictate the next steps. So if we choose, as an example, if we say, you know, our customer is a millennial and we want to drive website traffic, what we would do is we would pick an influencer that spoke to that audience, but we might actually engage them on a blogging platform where we've got a link that's going back to our website rather than Instagram as an example. Or if we say our customer is, you know, 30 years old, and really our content's a little bit average, so that's what we're aiming for, is we'd probably go for a little bit older influencer who speaks to that audience, and Instagram as the channel. And we'd also probably make sure that we can engage all their content on our own channels as well. So step 3 is strategy and creative. So when we've identified who our customer is and what we're trying to achieve, that's where we really sit down, and this is the fun part, is figure out how we foresee that coming to life with influencers. The fourth one is the influencer research and audience insights. So here what we want to do is we really want to find the influencers that speak to the audience that we're targeting. So this is where it's fabulous to shortlist on Instagram or blogs or Facebook, all of the influencers, but we really need to either reach out to them and make sure we get all of their audience stats, or use a platform like Scrunch where you've got it all in the interface, because we don't want to work with an influencer that's not speaking to our audience, because that really is money down the drain. So once we've got our list of influencers that we want to work with, the next one is influencer outreach and negotiation. And that is literally exactly what it sounds like. It's reaching out to each one of those influencers, talking to them about your brand and product and what you're trying to achieve, and negotiating their rates. The most important thing here is in that initial outreach email is to be super short and sharp. Influencers get hundreds of emails every day. They're often on press release lists, so they often ignore a lot of emails. What they're looking for is short, sharp, why they should be excited about your brand and what's in it for them. So the next one is influencer briefs and contracts. So once you've got your bevy of influencers who are excited to work with the brand, this is where, you know, when we talked about some of the pitfalls, not briefing them correctly can really derail a campaign. So what we do is we take the time to step out everything about the campaign, the key messages, the expectation of the influencer, what their delivery requirements are, how much they'll be paid. We even go to the trouble of doing a do's and don'ts section. So really, you know, that you either do want them to produce X number of images, you don't want them to mention any competitors, all of the things that you really need out of them. Some of it might seem like common sense, but it's absolutely critical to set the expectation up front to make sure that you get exactly what you pay for. The next one, content production and distribution. This is the easy part. This is where you can sit back and relax, and the influencer will do what they do best at, which is creating amazing content and sharing that with their channels. The next one is QA. So this is where you get back to work and make sure that the influencer did stick to the brief. Look, every now and again it does happen that an influencer won't, that they'll, you know, be having an off day or they make a mistake. We are all human at the end of the day. So it is super important that you do just double check each of the posts to make sure it does align to what you were expecting. And again, because you would have briefed them so thoroughly, you can actually go back to that brief if they haven't quite hit the mark and ask them to reshoot or change or update the copy depending on what it is that they've done. To be honest, it doesn't happen a lot if you have a really solid brief. So that's why we recommend that really highly. The next one is mid-campaign optimizations. And this is where I touched on that we really should be understanding what's working and what's not working for our brand. So here, it's really about starting to collect and evaluate the data. When you look at each of the influencers, which ones drove the original KPIs and objectives that we set in step number 2, and then figuring out why. Were they all, you know, fashion bloggers over health and fitness bloggers, or were they all on Instagram over blogs? Like, what is it about them that has made them perform? So that way you can actually start doubling down on those influencers, and especially if you plan to scale up the campaign. The next step is reporting. And of course, in every marketing strategy, it's so critical to assess what worked and what didn't work. So in the reporting phase, this is really where we step through every influencer and understand what did they actually achieve for the brand, and would we work with them again. And the last one is scale. So once you actually know all of those insights, it is so much easier to actually either engage some of those influencers into more longer term ambassador roles, or really have it solid, you know, what you need to do, what you need to look at for an influencer marketing campaign in the next run through. And so that brings me to the end of the formal presentation. So I will just jump onto the chat and see if we had any questions come through. And it doesn't look like we did. So if anyone does have any questions, you are more than welcome to pop that in the chat box right now. I'm very happy to answer anyone's questions. However, while we're waiting for that, I will just mention, if you do plan to do influencer marketing, you are more than welcome to use the voucher code shortcuts for a month's free access to the Scrunch platform. Essentially, if you do plan to do some influencer marketing, all of that research and analysis is done for you. So it's fantastic just to check out while it's free as well. But you are also welcome to email me at danielle@scrunch.com or give me a call on 0408 199 896. I'm very happy to answer anyone's questions personally if they don't want to pop them in the chat box today. Otherwise, it doesn't look like any questions have come through, but thank you all so much for joining the call today. Appreciate your time.